evening, everybody, and welcome to our podcast, RAMP, Real Access Motivates Progress. We are here every Wednesday night live, and tonight we have a great show for you tonight. We are honored tonight with our Secretary of State, Nellie Gorbea. Thank you so much, Nellie, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate having you.
Thank
Why
you so
don't you
much,
tell
Tina.
the
It's great to
viewers?
be here.
Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, and we'll break the ice that way.
Sure. Well, I'm fortunate enough to be Rhode Island's Secretary of State. I was elected by the voters of Rhode Island back in 2014 and was reelected in 2018. I am originally from Puerto Rico, so I'm an adopted Rhode Islander. I love Rhode Island, and it's been wonderful to be part of a community that, works so hard every day. To be in elections, which is one of the areas that my office deals with in this time period, has been particularly important. And I come into this because I really believe that government should work for everyone. My mission as your Secretary of State is to engage and empower all Rhode Islanders. And so I look forward to working with people who have a variety of challenges when confronting government. Government sometimes doesn't make it easy for people, and I think that's wrong. So, for example, Rhode Islanders with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. In my case, I deal a lot also with people with language issues. And so all of the spectrum in terms of where we are and how can we make government work better for you as a Rhode Islander is what gets me up and going, every day. And, but, you and I were talking a little bit before the show about sort of, there's still a lot of places that don't make accommodations. And it's amazing, right? It's 30 years since the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in some ways, we've come a long ways with access and equity and inclusion. And yet, there's a lot of ways in which we haven't. And I know that in my office, we're always looking for ways to improve and to be more inclusive. There's never an end to what we're working on. It's, there might be some new technology, a new approach. And so I depend on all of you, the people watching and the experts in the field to help us change things for the better. Because in the end, it's your Secretary of State's office, not mine. I just happen to be the person that's, fortunate enough to run it for you.
Well, I have to say we are so blessed to have you because every interaction I have had with your office has been smooth, has been easy, has been wonderful working with you. And it's true. I don't think anybody is maliciously inaccessible. I just don't think that they know and they don't take those extra steps to do that. But what I would like to start off with is kind of give everybody a little bit of rundown on your duties as Secretary of State. For those that don't know, like, what is your job span? Like, what are some of the duties that you are required to do for our state?
Sure. So historically, the Secretary of State would be just like any secretary in an office or school. This is the way I explain it, right? What does that person do? They collect information. And historically, the Secretary of State's office has functioned kind of like a filing cabinet, with 4 drawers that, one was elections, the other drawer was business services, because businesses get incorporated in our office. The other one was open government, transparency, lobbyists are registered, open meetings, any meeting in the public sector, whether it be at a local level, whether it be the, Westerly Zoning Board or the Airport Corporation Board, has to file a meeting notice, an agenda, the minutes of those meetings with our office. So it's a one-stop shopping for engaging to see what government is doing. You can even get emails actually sent to you with that information when something is posted. And then finally, our state archives and state library, which have amazing historic documents. And so what I tried to do over the last 6 years, and I'm really excited about, is turning it from a passive depository as a filing cabinet to something that's a hub of information, a modern gateway that connects Rhode Islanders with their government. And so our mission really as a department is to engage and empower all of our citizens by making government more accessible, encouraging civic pride, enhancing commerce, and making sure that elections run safe and securely. So, in our business services division, we help you if you're interested in starting a business. And we have a really great new business portal that makes it really easy, not just to incorporate, but also tells you what other steps do you need? How much do you need to pay other than to our office in terms of licenses and fees? We have other resources in the community that are free, that are there. We have a great partnership, for example, with SCORE, which is a great nonprofit that puts small businesses in touch with retired executives who want to help out. So there's a lot of different things, but the one that a lot of people know me for is elections. That's the one right now that's really hot.
Oh, gee, I wonder why, because we have an election on Tuesday. You must be going crazy in your office right now.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a little bit busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
How have you, I know,
mhm.
well, I know being on the Governor's Commission for Disability, we work with the election board very frequently about making sure that it was very accessible. How has your office taken that step to making sure that all Rhode Islanders can make sure that they vote because it's accessible to all people with disabilities as well?
Mhm. Yeah. So elections in Rhode Island, interestingly enough, are a team sport. So there's three different entities that are involved in running an election. And you just mentioned the Board of Elections. There are colleagues, they're a separate agency, and they have its own board. And yes, the Governor's Commission on Disabilities works with them to make sure that all polling locations are accessible, polling locations that the local boards of canvassers in each community have chosen to be polling locations. In my office, we have the central voter registration system. We have a lot of information for Rhode Islanders about, how Rhode Island elections work, and information about you as a voter. And we prepare the ballots. And then once the ballots are prepared, they go over to the Board of Elections, and the Board of Elections runs the day of elections with local boards of canvassers. So election day, in some ways, for me is nail biting time. Now, I answer a lot of questions. I try to be helpful from the sides since my office doesn't have actual election duties, which is fine because I'm on the ballot every 4 years. So that's a good thing. Or my office, I should say. So when I first came into the office, I set up about modernizing and upgrading our voting infrastructure so that it really could meet the challenges of contemporary life. And most recently, we fought all the way to the Supreme Court with a great case that made it easier during this pandemic for voters to be able to vote from home. My position on voting is that all eligible Rhode Islanders can and should vote. And so we have to make that accessible. And when you make it accessible to people, it doesn't at all have to affect the integrity of the election. In fact, I think it can increase the integrity of an election to have as many people voting as possible. Because, and going back to the Supreme Court decision, what had to do with voting from home, the mail ballots. Originally, Rhode Island has this law that says that when you had an oath envelope for a mail ballot, your signature on it had to be either witnessed by two people or a notary public. Well, under regular times, that's super difficult. During a pandemic, it's nearly impossible. So it was going to be a
Yeah.
barrier to people voting from home. And so we fought that through, and we were able to get it lifted. And the governor has an executive order that really all you need to do on the oath envelope is sign it, because really the signature is exactly what we use to make sure that you're the voter that you say you are. We have an original signature in the central voter registration database that we match up with this one. Now, in cases of people who may have had some sort of illness and their signature has changed over time, do not fear. Call your local board of canvassers, explain the situation, and they'll walk you through how they want you to deal with this. I actually had a case of somebody who had gotten MS and over time was not able to sign the same way. And we said, call your local board of canvassers, and they called the clerk, and the clerk made a note of it in the file. And so they were able to provide, in this case, in the oath envelope, you can provide either a driver's license number or last four digits of your social. And that helps election officials verify that you are who you say you are. So we've made a lot of improvements this particular cycle to make sure that all eligible voters can and do vote. And at this point, I have to give kudos to now Congressman Jim Langevin, who, of course, really put us ahead of the curve. Way back when he moved us from those Schutz lever machines, those very inaccessible machines, to the paper ballots, which are the gold standard now of elections, with the voting
Right.
tabulators.
Yeah, and like I said, I know personally, I've been on the front lines working with the Board of Elections, rolling through actual polling sites, rolling through to see what needs to be changed and what needs to be done in a pandemic, because there are those people who want to vote in person, and they have absolutely every right to do that. And every polling place that I know of, we have gone above and beyond to make sure that no matter your ability, you can still go in and vote in person. So there's no excuse not to vote, because there are many ways to vote this year, and you can actually go in person to make sure that your vote counts. So bottom line is get out and vote, because we've made it easy for you to do so.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, Tina. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, just in this election cycle, so my office has worked with the advocacy group DQ Systems to improve accessibility by providing an online mail ballot application that's more accessible to people who might have accessibility issues. We've added accessibility tags, so anyone using a screen reader or other assistive technology can use our application PDF. And then, our efforts made the online mail ballot application, according to them, more accessible to 26% of Americans with disabilities. So that was a huge sort of step forward. We also have historically and routinely provide Braille and tactile ballots. And of course, every polling place in Rhode Island now has a handicap accessible voting booth, which is the AutoMark machine, and a sheet magnifier to ensure anyone can take part of our democratic process. And that includes the early in-person voting. So you have 3 ways to vote in Rhode Island: from home, with whatever assistance you might need at home. You can, and by the way, I should say, for those of you who still have mail ballots at home, please have them deposited in an election drop box. Don't put them in the mail. Don't risk something happening. I'm not saying anything about the Postal Service. I'm just saying we have drop boxes in every single city and town for you to drop it off, and it goes directly to the election officials. And those ballots need to be received by 8 p.m. on November 3rd. If you put them in after 8 p.m. or you put them in the mail on November 3rd, they will be rejected. So don't lose your vote. Make sure you do your vote early. Early in-person voting in city and town halls, it has to be accessible. And in fact, I myself went to North Kingstown, and there's an AutoMark machine there available during the entire 20 days of voting, so that everybody has access to be able to vote early in person. And then finally, we have November 3rd, the big day. Although we've already had 200,000 Rhode Islanders vote early or by mail, so that's a big chunk.
Yeah. With the pandemic and COVID and everything, it's actually in your benefit to try to space it out and go early. Your vote is going to count just as much as if you vote today or if you vote on November 3rd. So, space it out, go on an odd time if you're not working, and you can go early in the morning, or you can go mid-afternoon, you know what I mean? Or space out your voting, around other people. The lines aren't that long. There's not long waiting because people are spacing it out. So, like I said, bottom line is you have no excuse not to vote, whether it's early,
actually,
whether it's
I'll
in
give
person,
people.
whether it's yeah, you need to
Yeah,
vote.
I'll give people a tip. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go first thing in the morning to avoid the lines. That's actually the thought of a lot of people. If you go mid-morning, if you have that flexibility, or even mid-afternoon, as you were saying, a lot shorter lines. But in the end, don't be confused by what you see in other states. What happens in other states is not what's happening here. most people that I've heard anecdotally speak to me about early in-person voting have gotten in and out in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's really good. Like I said, so you have no excuse. So get out to vote. So we'll move on to something else because now we're just going to tell everybody, make sure you vote.
Oh,
Doing all of the
before we switch from
okay.
voting though, if you have any questions, go to vote.ri.gov, or you can call the United Way hotline 211. We have trained people there to be able to answer your voting questions. So those are our two trusted sources of information: vote.ri.gov and 211.
Perfect. And we just had 2-on-1 on last week, so we talked about that as well. So we're heavily on the voting. But going to some businesses now, and like we were talking about earlier about, 30 years and a lot of businesses, what do you think that we can do to make sure that new businesses are more aware of ADA compliance to bring in more business for them?
Yeah, no, I think that your efforts, Tina, are really the right approach, which is if we could have some volunteers that could maybe do this, maybe reach out to the chambers and work with them as a way to say, hey, this is not a like gotcha moment. This is a wow, you could be earning more business dollars if you made your store more accessible. Let's show you how it's not, because you're right. It's a lot of times it's not that people don't want to be accessible or helpful. They certainly want your dollars. It's that they don't realize
Right.
the barriers that there are in place. And so, and I see that with regards in my own experience as Hispanic with people who have language issues where they're not totally fluent in English and they don't totally understand. And it's so a lot of times it's not malice, it's just ignorance of the issues.
Right. When they're going through your office and, inquiring about starting a new business, is there a line or is there somebody saying about ADA compliance? Like, can we catch it there? Like, at least bringing it
Huh.
up. I know, what I'm saying? Like, especially when you have the language barriers and, people from all walks of life wanting to start a new business. I'm thinking that there should be something that we could do in your office when they're applying. Why can't we have literature or somebody there,
Yeah.
bringing that up about becoming ADA compliant, about being
Hmm.
inclusive? Because we're fighting to give you our money. So help us give you money.
Yeah. I think, Tina, I think that's a really great idea. And I'm going to have my staff look into. I mean, I know that we do some things in terms of the website itself, because most times people aren't actually coming physically anymore. It's more of a virtual thing,
Right.
especially during COVID. So our website, for example, is very user friendly in that it not only walks the user through each topic, but is also screen reader friendly. But you're talking, and by the way, that includes all forms and form instructions. Um, you know, but I'll have to take a look to see how much we raise accessibility of a business as an issue and what it is that we can do to help. That's a great observation. In our notary training, I know that, and we do notary trainings about twice a month. We do include specific training on notarizing documents for those with physical disabilities that would prevent them from signing, as well as blind or deaf signers. But it's an interesting idea to sort of incorporate some of that into people's sort of checklists. And I think that the goal here is to make it easier both to people, both as business entrepreneurs and as consumers. So thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, because when we do roll throughs, as we call them, when we go out to the
Yep.
businesses and we roll around, number one, they can make their businesses accessible, not for the dollar amount that they originally think. They hear ADA compliant and they're thinking thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I've helped businesses turn around for less than $100 with some of the things that they had to
Mm-hmm.
do. But a lot of the businesses are telling me, number one, either they're grandfathered in, which we all know is just another excuse because it's not a thing anymore. But people don't know
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, legitimately just don't know that. And two, when they opened their business, they were so encompassed with opening the business that they didn't even
Hmm.
know about that piece.
Yeah.
That I'm thinking that
Yeah.
if there was a checklist or there
Yeah.
was a way that we could help guide them through that, we could
Sure.
pick up a whole piece for them
Hmm.
there.
Yeah, no, so I'm going to make a note of this to have my business services division check in with the Governor's Commission on Disabilities and see how we can partner on this. This is a great idea. Maybe
Yeah,
we can
because
even
I
get
could
businesses
actually,
from people coming into business from Massachusetts and Connecticut because we're so accessible.
oh, absolutely. And,
Hmm.
Ramp would
Hmm.
be wonderful to help,
Yep.
with that
Yes.
transition, because we're
Oh
out in
yeah.
the public and we're actually rolling through
Hmm.
areas, and I know another big thing that your office does, because I'll tell you, it was infallible to us a year ago when we started Ramp and had to learn how to do the
Yep.
whole nonprofit.
Um,
They literally took hours and sat with me and my other people and
yeah.
walked us right through it step by step. And I can't thank your office enough. Tell everybody
Mhm.
like how that process works and how your office does that, because I'll tell you, it was infallible to us. We so needed that.
Yeah. No, well, we're here to serve the public, and whatever you need, we're here there. We're going to be there for you. Right now, under COVID, of course, people can't just come into the office, but you can set up an appointment, and so there are instructions on the website on how to do that. Um, or there's a lot of information right now on the website that will make it easier as well. So first and foremost, I want you to go to sos.ri.gov to our business portal. And then once you've gone through that, we're happy, or, even as you're going through it, we're happy to answer questions. The business services division, which also oversees nonprofits incorporating, uh, has a less than 1 minute response time on their phone lines. And it's a
Yeah,
real
they are.
person.
I'll tell you, your staff is absolutely incredible. No matter who I've
Great.
called or who I've asked a question
Hmm.
to, they have been right there. They have answered everything that I needed to know and then some. And and they even give you ideas of maybe you should do it this way, or maybe you can change it up to do it
Yeah.
this way. And they are absolutely, fabulous. And I can't commend your office enough for that.
Well,
They've been wonderful
it,
to us.
no, thanks. It goes back to our mission. Our mission is to serve the public in a way that matters to them. And that means different things for different people. Some people just
Right.
need, some help on finding the right form. Other people need a little bit more work and walk through because they are not familiar with how you start businesses in Rhode Island or nonprofits. And so I'm glad to
Right.
hear that my office was able to help Ramp with their incorporation. And look at you today. I mean, I love the
I
Red
know.
Bag Initiative. I think that's fantastic. You and I met actually around that. You were speaking
We were at Studio
on
10.
the Studio 10, and
Yeah.
you were telling me all about it like a good advocate.
Yeah. We were on Studio 10 the same day you were talking about the archives and the history, and I
Mhm.
was out promoting the Red Bag Initiative, which FEMA picked up. So our Red Bag Initiative actually went global with FEMA, and they're handing
There you
out
go.
our red bags throughout the world. It's a little initiative that started here in
Wow.
the small state of Rhode Island, from an idea that I had, is now global. And we thank
That's
your office enough
fantastic.
because you guys do a lot, and you help us a lot there. But talk about the archives, because that was amazing to me, of the history that we get to see, that's accessible, that we actually get to see.
Yes, no, and thankfully we've moved into even better location right now. We just moved the Rhode Island State Archives over to 33 Broad Street. The One Way Bosset Hill is the name of the building. It has parking. It's accessible on the bus route, and so what we have there are the documents of the making of this state, dating all the way back to 1638. And we have really improved on accessibility of these records by expanding transcriptions of these old documents and OCR. So researchers who may be visually impaired can still read the historic records. If there's a particular historic record that you're looking for and it hasn't been transcribed, we'll do that for you, because if you're asking for it, somebody else might as well, and so we're going to get it done. Uh, we've enabled, closed caption videos on all our YouTube videos and clear headings on the digital archive and catalogs, and just increase remote access to digitized materials and records that are requested on demand for anybody who's not able to physically visit the archives right now. Again, because of COVID, we are doing visits by appointments only. And but you can come in, and we have a ton of people who look for everything from, stuff regarding the state's history or a particular time that they're interested in researching, to people's own genealogy and family records. So we have a lot to offer in the Rhode Island State Archives.
It's so amazing too that it's not just packed away in some back storage container where no one can get to, that any Rhode Islander can access. That is truly amazing to me, because like I said, the pieces that you had when we met on Studio 10 were incredible, and the old and the paperwork, and just to see that is just something, that we're proud of our state. Go out and see what made us who we are today, because I love being a Rhode Islander. I don't think I'll ever be anything but a Rhode Islander. I just love my state so much. And we're the forefront.
I think very much like you, as somebody who's learned her Rhode Island history over her time here, we have so many great history lessons, both on the really positive about, how we were involved in the making of this country, by providing guidance on separation of church and state. We were the ones who, brought that into the Constitution, into the Bill of Rights. We have other areas of our history that we need to really reflect upon. Our role in the slave trade is a significant sort of black mark. And we need to know that, we need to own that, and learn from it as well. But overall, it's a history like no other. I think that I'm hoping eventually we will have our own state archives and Rhode Island History Museum, because I think Rhode Islanders deserve to have a space that they can bring their children to that visitors can come to. With all the historic tourism dollars that are spent in this country, we don't have that one place that celebrates what Rhode Island has stood for, as what really started as a very inclusive, progressive kind of community, and has been really instrumental to the making of this country. The things like having Slater Mill, we have tie-ins to all these places all over our state that could really, a state archives could be that economic engine to promote cultural tourism, like our neighbors at the north have done and kind of run away with. The Gaspee.
I just think it's so great. Yeah, and it is true. It's so great, and I love the fact that, good or bad, we take the things that we did positive, and we also take the things that we do take the black mark for and learn from it, because we all learn from our mistakes. We all make them at every point in our life. We all make them. We make them as a country. We make them as a state. We make them as an individual. And to push it aside and to make it sound like it never happened, or to not own it, isn't the right way to do it, where Rhode Island owns it and fixes it and tries to make it better. And that's what I think makes me so proud of Rhode Island, that we don't brush it under the rug. We own it and we make it better, and we learn from it from there.
But that happens as people are involved. So I'm a real big believer that including many different perspectives, backgrounds, opinions really strengthens a community, really helps us determine better solutions, like what you were talking about, because people have stereotypes about what this or that means. And, by talking with someone who actually understands that, or feels that, or gets, who has a different experience, we can come to a better community. Absolutely. I was just thinking about also like the burning of the Gaspee. When I go to schools in Rhode Island, I talk about that. And sadly, some kids don't even know about it. They know about the Boston Tea Party, but they don't know about the burning of the Gaspee. And, one was, as I like to tell them, a frat party. The other one was a real act of revolution. The Gatsby, you have people going under the cover of darkness to take over a British revenue ship with no loss of life, one shot fired, everybody getting off, nothing really stolen except one cup, versus and then everybody going away and nobody ever being found out, or dressing up like Native Americans and throwing tea into the harbor. I mean,
Right.
one's an act of revolution, the other one is a frat party.
Right.
So
And it's so
it's
true. And
yeah.
like I said, I mean, Rhode Island leads in so many things that I don't think people even know about. Like, we're one of the only states in this country that has the Home Modification Act going on,
Mm-hmm.
where we help people
Mm-hmm.
age in place and have that. We're the only state in the country that has that act going right now. The caregiver conference that we have now, we have the biggest one
Mm-hmm.
here in the state of Rhode Island. We're leading the charge with Congressman Langevin and being the only congressman being a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, leading the disabled community. And then we have so many firsts here in Rhode Island that people need to celebrate that, and they need to embrace it, and we need to do better. And I want to be the
Yes.
first fully accessible state in the country, 100% fully accessible. We're a small enough state, and we can do it, and it's only going to benefit everybody. Because let's face it, at any given time, any one of us could end up in this
Yes.
wonderful disabled community. 10-minute
Mm-hmm.
surgery, and I ended up in it totally out of the blue. Anybody could end up
It's
like me,
true.
or a loved one could end up like me. Let's make Rhode Island accessible to everybody, and let's lead the charge, and let Massachusetts and Connecticut and everybody follow our lead. Let's be, the leaders and the entrepreneurs. And I believe we have the right people in place to do that, especially, like I said, your
Absolutely.
office has been instrumental. And they're so opening to new ideas and to new things. What are some of the highlights that you would like to have people know about your office?
For me, it's the fact that, you know, my office is like many other, Rhode Island state government offices run, every day is done by state employees who are part of a bargaining unit and a labor union. And we have managed to build a community within that department that delivers high level, top notch service to Rhode Islanders. And that's done when you include people, when you're not afraid, like you're saying, of new ideas, and when you listen and say, wow, that's a really cool idea. I don't know if I can implement it immediately, but let me see what I can do about it. I always
Right.
tell people who are always, I get a lot of praise for how the business services portal works or how elections are going. And I said, and that is done by state employees. Let me know if you have an idea that could make it even better, because we own our code, our software code, and we have people in place that can make those changes. So I think it proves to Rhode Islanders that their Rhode Island government can absolutely work for them. And to me, that's the joy of being your Secretary of State and being an elected leader in Rhode Island.
And it's so true. And I love the fact that you're so open, because there's no idea that I've ever brought to you or to your staff that I haven't, within a couple of weeks, saw at least a couple of questions come back to me, or a couple of ideas. Like I said, nothing's going to change overnight, but
Yeah.
if
Hmm.
you guys don't know about it, you don't know how to change it. But every time I brought something up, or I know of somebody who's brought something up, you've gone that extra step to try to implement it and try to make it function and try to make it work. Why is that so important to you?
Because I think that's how we get really good government. And that's in the end what I've run for. I've run for making government work for people. And I don't have all the answers. My staff doesn't have all the answers. I'll give you an example. I have employees that have been there 20, 30 years, their entire adult working life. Do they know how a business owner might look at something? No, not necessarily. But we can have that business owner speak with us as a way to better understand and then provide solutions to some of the issues that they're bringing. Same by the same token, I, as sort of the leader of the office, need to listen to my own employees about ideas that they may have, as they are the ones that deal with the public, and
Right.
figure out, okay, wow, what are the ways in which we can make things even better? Anytime we do a release of a website, we test it out with random users, because it doesn't help if it's me and you who absolutely already know the stuff. We know where to find
Right.
things. But to take people who have no idea, and have them say, this is so easy, I can get to what I'm looking for. That makes a big difference.
Right.
We had this experience when we dramatically improved the Voter Information Center webpage, and we had a whole group of people helping us with accessibility. Kate Bowden, from the accessibility rights community, she was instrumental in helping us not only see things that honestly we hadn't seen at all, but also put us in touch with resources, like you're saying at the very beginning, right? It
Right.
doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot. And in the end, we're a better world, we're a better country if we include the talents and abilities that every single one of us has.
I totally agree with that. And, even being a big disability advocate as I am, I don't know everything about every disability. I'm learning
Hmm.
every day. I'm learning that there's new disabilities out there that I never even knew of, that I'm finding
Wow.
out about every day. And, websites, certain colors on websites aren't any good, or
Hmm.
certain ways of doing things, I'm learning every day myself. So if we don't open ourselves up to listening
Hmm.
and learning from other people and actually really hearing them, not just talking, listening to and really hearing them and why it's important to them, is what's going to change our world
Hmm.
and what's going to change our day to day and what's going to change our hearts. Because I'll tell you, making
Hmm.
somebody smile or fixing a small thing for somebody makes my heart grow. I feel like the Grinch most of the time, when my heart just grows 3 sizes because I made somebody smile today. You know what I mean? And I fixed a small thing for
Yeah.
them. I just think that's amazing that our state can do that. What are some of the
Yeah.
biggest things that you get from businesses, that you hear that they want to change that we could encompass?
So a lot of it has to do with just the red tape of getting things done. And red tape is not just in number of paper products that we need to produce or hurdles. It's even in the way the forms are written. Like, so we actually in our office, that was one of the things I did in my first term. We took all business forms and put them into plain English. It turns out, like, I
Yeah,
really don't care if the law says domicile. I'm going to say address, because that's what people
right,
understand. We see this right now with early in-person voting. The law says emergency early voting or something like that. Nobody calls it that. Like, why?
right.
Why confuse people? Let's just be where the people are, so that they can access the services that people might want and need. And for businesses, simplicity is key. I don't want somebody who's like super excited about starting a business to go on to the business services division portal and then say, oh wow, I need a lawyer, I need this, I don't, like, because I don't understand what they're telling me. So we intentionally have put together all this information about, how do you start a business, how do you incorporate, what are the differences between the different kinds of incorporations. And then if you put all of that in simple language, then when you translate it into other languages, there's more likelihood that it'll be translated appropriately. So, because the language is simple, if you make it very
Right.
complicated, it's more likely that it will be translated right. So we've done a lot of things like that. I hear from at the very beginning, it was, you know, the certificates of good standing, the letters of good standing. Those were a really big issue for businesses. And thanks to the work that the governor and my office has done, we've really shortened that like considerably. It went back from being a black hole of months to literally within a few days. And
Right.
and you can do that if you put yourself in the shoes of the person that's going to interact with your office.
I agree with you. Speaking of the letter of good standing, I missed the one with the state seal on it, so I could put it in a frame and hang it on my wall for my nonprofit. We don't have those anymore, but those would be something to bring back, because I'll tell you, that's
There you
something
go.
proud to hang, that your nonprofit is
Okay.
in good standing with your state and with the little state seal on it. I would love to have one framed and hung on my wall. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of other people have said the same thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Having that
All
state seal,
right. Well,
having that state
see,
seal
I'll
on,
check.
oh, well, that's what I'm saying. But having
Yeah.
that state
Thanks.
seal hanging on your wall because you started something is just a thing of pride, to be able to, like, having your
Yeah.
first dollar framed and hung. It's the same thing to me. You know, having a seal of approval from your state that you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's like getting that gold star at school. You know what I mean? It's something that people can be proud of, and I think we need to go back to that, because I think it's something that, you know, people are proud of to have. You know, we're such a diverse
Mhm.
state. I mean, you could walk from any corner of this state and run
Mhm.
into 50 different cultures.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, we have that many businesses and stuff. Let's celebrate them all. Let's celebrate the fact that they can come here and they can open a business and they can be successful. Have you been having
So
a lot of problems during COVID and everything with, like, the business portals, or people in their businesses and stuff? Like, what is
no.
the big? That's good
So
that you're
what's
not, but I
interesting
mean,
is, yeah, so it's not, because literally 2 weeks before the close down, we announced a brand new business portal that was completely enhanced website. And so what's interesting is, part of what has made us succeed despite the pandemic as a government agency is that um, you you don't just do it when there's a crisis. I started back in 2015 by upgrading, like, web servers and software and training people. Like, you do all that stuff that doesn't get you a single press release, actually, or a press conference or anything, but they're
right.
important steps. Build your team and the ability for you to do bigger things. And so once we had all that infrastructure in place, then we could do things like redesign our new business portal. And so, no, absolutely. So it's been seamless since the pandemic hit, and people love it. I every week I'll run into a business owner who will say, "I love your business portal," or an attorney or a CPA or someone. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, that's awesome, because, you know, we've heard so much negative of COVID and everything that's going on. It's so nice to hear the positive and that it's helping people. Have there been a lot of businesses opening during COVID? I know I've heard of some
There have
myself,
been
but
record, yes, absolutely. There have been record numbers of business openings. Now, of course, closings as well. And by the way, if
yeah.
you're at all involved with either a nonprofit or a business that needs to close, there's a whole section on the Secretary of State's business portal that will give you instructions that you have to follow. Because sometimes people think, oh, I'll do this and this and this, and then that's it. And they won't officially close the business with the state. And then you incur taxes, like to the $400, $450 worth of taxes. And if you let it go for a few years, it adds up. And there is no way that my office can give you a pass. So
Right.
you absolutely need to close your business properly so that you don't continue to accrue corporate taxes. Having said that, no, I mean, we've had a lot of business start in this time period. I think people are at home. There's a lot of job insecurity, and starting your own business is a good option.
I think it's amazing that everything that they told people with disabilities, that you can't work from home, you can't go to school from home, you can't do this from home. Within a month, everybody
Yeah.
was doing it. It was a new in thing. I say everybody got a small glimpse of what the disabled community lives with on a daily basis. You all can't go to the places that we want to go to. You all can't, you know, go to businesses or to school or to certain places. You're all living like us. The difference is the world is going to open back up for the rest of you. Make sure you're bringing us along with you. Make sure you're making your
Very good
business, now
point.
that you live like us, now that you live like us, make sure you're opening it up for us so we can get out like everybody else, because we want to be part of the real world as well. I don't want to just, you know, most people think, why would you want to go out after 9 to 5? I said, because I can't miraculously walk at 5 o'clock. It doesn't work that way. I'm disabled
Yeah.
all of the time. I wish, but it doesn't work that way. And we want to go out for a drink, or we want to go out dancing or to a restaurant, but if we can't get in, we can't give you our money, and we can't flourish together, and you can't meet wonderful people like me and everybody in my community to help change the way you look at things. So that is so important, that I want to bring up the positive during COVID too. It's not all negative, unfortunately. There is some, but that's with everything. But look at all of the positive that has come out of it. Look at all of the initiatives and the technology and the way we moved forward to go forward with other people, that there are more people with disabilities working now than ever, because they can work from home, and they can, participate, and they can be part of their lives. They're part of the conversation. And we are intelligent people with a conversation. Like I tell most people, my legs don't work. My mouth sure does. Trust me. But yeah, so I mean, in the final few minutes that we have, tell everybody what you would like to leave them with for your state. Like, what are some of the final words that you would like to have everybody have an impression for your office?
I want people to hopefully experience all of the different services that the Secretary of State's office has to offer. Yes, we help you with your elections and where to find how to best vote and all that. But we also can help you start a business. Or a nonprofit organization. We can help you hold government accountable by giving you information about when government is meeting in whatever area you're interested in. And we need your voices at the policymaking table. It is, I'm a firm believer that our best public policy solutions come when there's a diversity of opinions, perspectives, and backgrounds around the policymaking table. If we had, for example, RAMP involved in every single economic development measure from the very beginning, we would have a different outcome in terms of results out in the community. And so each and every one of you who's seeing this has great ideas that we need to learn about in government. So going to my Department of State website, you can find out for them. That we do have a government, for the people, by the people, of the people, and I take that very, very seriously. And we can have excellent, like, national leading government. My department alone has won several national awards because of projects that my own state employees have done, and that fills me with incredible pride. And so we need to hear from you in the disability community, of course, across all of the issues that you're facing, because it's your government too. And I take that very, very seriously. But the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if you make your voices heard. And the one biggest way that you can make your voice heard in the next few days is your vote.
Vote.
So make sure you make a plan to vote. I'm here for you if you need any help.
I tell most of my friends, you can't complain if you don't vote. If you don't put your vote in, you can't complain about the outcome. It's the same thing with your department. If you don't voice your concerns or voice your ideas, you can't complain that it's not working good. Give somebody your ideas. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but you can't complain if you don't take that step and you don't try. So like I said, this was absolutely wonderful. I think so many more people learned how wonderful you absolutely are. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, not just because I'm talking to you. You know how I feel, though. But also letting everybody know, make sure that you go on to www.rampisinclusion.com and grab your red bag, because being a red bag carrier is so important. And I know that our Secretary of State is a red bag carrier, so everybody needs to follow her lead. It carries all of your medical information on you at all times, and it's non-tech based. So no matter what the weather, what the outcome, your information is always readily available, only to the EMTs and to the doctors that need it. So make sure you go on to and get your red bag. But I want to thank you, Secretary of State, for coming on and joining us tonight. This was so informative and so helpful. And the bottom line to everybody, go vote. No matter who you vote for or where your heart is, just go make your voice heard and go and vote. Thank you so much, Secretary. I was glad to have you, and we will be in touch to do more great things together.
Thank you so much, Tina, for your leadership and for your time tonight. Bye.
All right, bye. Thank you, everybody.